One of the things that caught my eye within that, brief description about your platform is, you talk about discovering interesting features within that data, and sort of a light bulb went off because ultimately the mission of this podcast is around, featuring people and platforms who are accelerating scientific discovery. Part of that happens, I think, as a sort of a consequence of just helping scientists do their work more effectively. But this seems to go maybe even a little bit deeper, which is, hey, this is helping us maybe bring some additional intelligence and sort of be a kind of a co-researcher with a scientist to see, is there a there that maybe we otherwise might have missed? So could you share more about what your intention is there and maybe what the state of that looks like today?
Yeah, so I think the first part is exactly what you're saying, is like just improve productivity, right? I think there's a lot of benefits in doing that in and of itself. And then the other aspect is, if we can save you a bunch of time that you're going to do something manually, well, where are you going to repurpose that time? And so for us, part of that is, well, we want to support you diving deeper into your data, right? And if you were just doing kind of a cursory analysis before just to get to this one answer, can you now dig deeper and find an underlying truth that will save you an experiment in the future, right? That's actually like a big benefit of supporting that. The other aspect that we've been developing more recently is kind of what you're alluding to with the co-scientists, co-pilots of the world, is we've been building more AI agents to help answer those questions on your behalf and answer kind of not only the question that you have, that like first question, but see if we can go deeper. And I'd say it's still early days, right? Models are still getting better. But that to me is really the future, is the scientists will still be driving, okay, here's what I did in my experiment, right? Here are my hypotheses, but can we build AI agents to help answer the question, not just, okay, what happened in my experiment, but what is the kind of like underlying mechanism that is causing that to happen, right? So that you can develop new hypotheses off the back of that. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that's still early days for us. We've kind of spent the last couple of years really trying to help on that productivity front, and we will continue to do that. But I think that is where the future is going, is having systems and tools and agents, assistants, whatever you want to call it, to answer the questions that you don't even know that you should be asking.
As I hear that description, I was at JPM at a bunch of events, including in the digital health space, and tools and platforms that help doctors with diagnoses and radiologists and so forth. And there seem to be, and this has been around for a while, definitely tools that help, for example, radiologists look at scans maybe more quickly and give them maybe a heads up if there's something worth investigating here. I think that's now even moving into, having, for example, a doctor have multiple sources of the patient's data and be able to, again, not provide the, recommendation for a surgery and just have that happen, right? But ultimately maybe kind of give a little notifier to the doctor of, hey, there's something that might be interesting for you to look at. So I feel like what you're describing is taking that same sort of maybe thought or capacity and bringing it forward into the scientific kind of discovery domain.
Yeah, and maybe a concrete example of this is most scientists are very good at looking at the data from their most recent experiment. Which makes sense, right? You just ran this experiment, you want to figure out what happened. But oftentimes, you actually will get a deeper understanding of that data if you can look at that in the context of either the several past experiments of the same type that you ran, or maybe all the experiments you've ever run. But that's really time consuming, right? And it's hard to set up the data infrastructure in order to support that, right? Which is why most companies don't do this, right? Most scientists do that. It's just too hard to do. But what we're building and where we see the future going is, anytime you ask a question, that should be contextualized in all the data that you've generated, right? You spent millions, sometimes tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars generating all this data just to look at it once and never look at it again. Now, a lot of that data might not be helpful, but I can tell you for a fact that we see lots of examples where if you could look at all of that data, you actually would make better decisions and kind of save yourself a lot of time and money in the future. And so I think that's really where some of the kind of like specialness of kind of existing generative AI solutions and future generative AI solutions come into play is being able to answer those types of questions that are just too hard to answer today.
I love that idea, right? If I am a scientist, I've been working for 15 years, maybe there's an experiment that I did 8 years ago, which I've just lost track of because each one of my experiments is, mentally challenging and has a lot of information, and we naturally, forget things. For that data point to somehow be brought up again and help, come up with, the next hypothesis that's more informed and more interesting.
And it's not magic, right? Like there's lots of institutional knowledge that's lost when someone leaves, right? But there's also a lot of data that is there that can be useful. And so until we can even answer these questions, we don't know how useful this is. My hypothesis is actually a lot of this data could be useful to you. Not all of it, right? It's definitely not 100% utility, but I do think companies are going to be able to get better use out of their data and operate more efficiently and be able to hopefully bring drugs to clinic faster.